Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Jazakumullah Rafiq for a very educational lesson again. Jazakallah everyone for joining us for another session of question and answer. I'm just going to Abir Sahab, could you just allow me to record the session, please? Oh, things already started. Jazakallah. So alhamdulillah, we're going to, as I said yesterday, we're going to be recording the next coming durus. Because, as you know, people are going back to work now, and maybe people will be missing out, and a lot of people want to hear their questions answered. So, alhamdulillah, we've had many questions in already, and we'll try our best to answer those as best as we can. And inshallah, I'll just share those with you now. If you give me 1 second, please. Just been trying to get all the material ready for you guys. Today was quite a lengthy one. Some questions would seem to be small questions, but actually they're very detailed questions. So I urge you to just be patient and bear with me as I go through each of the answers. And some of them are short, some of them are a bit longer. So I'll try to divide them up so we're able to maintain everyone's interest, inshallah. I hope that we're able to learn again something. So may Allah Ta'ala enable us to increase our knowledge, and may we always try to find answers to any questions that we have. As I always say, there's no such thing as a silly question. Every question is valid, and these are your questions, and anything that you are not unsure of, send them in. As always, this is the last Monday of Ramadan. As you know, next Monday we'll have finished Ramadan. Eid would have started. Eid is this Sunday, so a very joyous time for all of us. So inshallah, I hope that we are able to take full benefit from these last few days. Remember, we are trying to increase our prayers, especially in these last few days. So remember everyone in your prayers. As always, I just quickly go through ways of finding answers through Holy Quran, through Sunnah, through Hadith, through various websites of the Jamaat, through different books, Fiqh al-Masih and Fiqh al-Ahmadiyya, to get those can we's or can't we's or any other questions relating to any topic. Again, I showed this to you last week as well. Different websites which you can go on and to get different kinds of answers. So without further ado, let's quickly begin the first question. So the first question which we will answer is, why do we read loud in some namaz and not loud in other namaz? So again, a very interesting question. Maybe we question this as well. One of the most amazing answers which I came across during my days in Jama, which I remembered and it really affected me a lot, is this. Firstly, of course, because the Holy Prophet ﷺ, this was the way he practiced it. It's not mentioned in the Quran, but as you know, the Holy Prophet ﷺ is an embodiment of the Quran, and the ways he did is exactly what Allah the Almighty told him to do. So first and foremost, it was the practice of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, so we continued that. But secondly, Khalifa Sani Raziyallahu anhu in Tafsir Kabir, in his commentary, said that namaz is in fact a test of obedience, and it's a test of our patience. Because if you think about it, so if we take Fajr, for example, the time when we are most tired, the time where we've just come out of bed, Allah the Almighty is telling us, you know, you're in this state of tiredness, so why don't you do namaz out loud? So for anyone who would be in that state, you would think, let me just quietly do namaz and come back. But Allah the Almighty says, no, you have to obey me, so I'm going to push your limits. And so when you come to namaz, you're going to have to read out loud, and you're going to have to listen to the Imam reading out loud. And there's much wisdom behind this. If you did namaz in a state of sleepiness and tiredness, maybe your thoughts would go off. Maybe that you would even fall asleep, for example. So to keep our attention and to keep our alertness in namaz, Allah the Almighty says, do namaz out loud. But he's also giving us some sort of relaxation and said, okay, you're doing out loud, so let's make the namaz a bit shorter. So that's why we read only 2 as first. And then we go to Zuhr and Asr, the times that we are most busy in our day, the times when there's a lot of noise and we are used to talking and we are in that mode of talking. Allah the Almighty said, in this moment, I want you to read namaz quietly. Again, this is against our nature because, as I said, we are already in a state of alertness. We are ready, we are active. But when you're in that state, Allah says, be quiet. Let's try calm it all down and let's pray in a calm manner. So again, Zuhr and Asr, another state of obedience. And then when we get to Maghrib and Isha, again we are finishing work, we are coming back home, and we just want to relax. So then Allah Almighty again says, let's do namaz out loud again. So again, this is the same procedure as we talked about before at Fajr. So but this time it's a little bit longer because, as you know, the later the night gets, the more blessings you can attain. So this is why Maghrib and Isha, we read namaz out loud, and Isha, as you know, the longest namaz, the time before we go to bed, we read namaz out loud again, and it's the longest. So this is the biggest test of our obedience. So this is a short answer of why we read namaz out loud and the hidden blessings and the hidden aspects of obedience which are embedded in namaz. Question 2. What does la hawla mean in the dua la hawla wa la quwwata? So let's just quickly go through this. Meaning of hawl. One time we read this dua is when the muaddin is saying hayya la salah and hayya la falah. So we are instructed to read la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So what does that actually mean? It means there is no power nor strength except Allah. So I'm just going to break this dua down. Let's just go through what each word means. So la means no, not, none, neither. As we know, la ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah. Hawla, so the answer to the question, hawla means change, or alteration, transformation, or movement, or motion. Wa, as you know, means and. La, again, same as the before, means no or not. Quwwata, this is the other word. La hawla wa la quwwata means strength, power, potency, force, might, etc., etc. Illa means except, and billah, be means with, and Allah means Allah. So the important ones is hawla and quwwata. Some can be very similar but also have their own meanings. So hawla means no change and no strength. So what we are reading here in essence is there's no strength, no alteration, nothing can be changed, nothing can be moved, nothing can even move an inch, nothing can be given any power except with Allah the Almighty. So that's why we pray this dua, to glorify Allah the Almighty and understand and recognize His true strength and His true supreme being. So this is the short answer of what hawla means. So there's different ways of translating the whole thing. There's neither change nor power except by the means of Allah. There's no transformation or strength except through Allah. There's neither progress nor might except through Allah. So then we understand just a little bit more of what this dua means. So we should also try to remember this dua and try to read it a lot as well during the day. Question 3, going through it quickly. Can we do namaz through Zoom? And this is something we didn't really know what Zoom was a few months ago, so now we know. And so people are asking, can we read namaz now through Zoom? One thing which you must understand is that Islam promotes praying together physically, and this is the most important word here. Physically is the true essence of what namaz is. So when we come to namaz, Islam promotes us to be present in that same area. So the purpose of a mosque, if we all started doing namaz through Zoom, if I was sitting in one area of the world and everyone else was sitting in their own respected areas, it wouldn't make sense that we all do namaz at the same time through technology, because there's a hidden, we spoke about congregational namaz, how it affects each person and how that light is illumined to each person to person. and that can't be done through technology, unfortunately. So this is why we must be present and be doing namaz together in the same place. Obviously, Huzur Anwar can decide whether we can do that in special circumstances, but as I said, we must be physically present in the area. But for example, we do use technology to do namaz, especially during Jalsa. As you know, the lady side, they're not joined with the men. They have their own separate place. And even with the men, not everyone can make it into the marquee. There's some people even go all the way back to right to the bazaar. But the main point is, as I already alluded to, that we are all present in the same area, and we can all hear namaz through the speakers. So just because we aren't physically inside the marquee, we still are part and present in that area, and that's the main key of understanding this. So no, we can't do namaz through Zoom, but there are other ways of going around that. So you try to be together and do namaz together. One point which is interesting, just like we do namaz in Jalsa through the speakers, in these days, because in Islamabad, not everyone is allowed to go to the mosque. They've made the rule now of 6 people should go and pray behind Huzur with the space between them. And Huzur is also instructed that the household members should turn on the speakers, which is connected to the mosque, and they should follow Huzur doing namaz in that way. So again, that's very interesting to note that through speaker system, you are allowed to do namaz behind the imam. And this was special instruction given by Huzur just for Islamabad, because as you know, they are all in the same area. And just you take the example of Jalsa and you apply it to Islamabad, it's almost the same thing. So this is why Huzur is given that instruction, so that everyone will still be able to take benefit from this. And I'm sure you would all understand that Huzur is staying in the same area as them. So obviously, naturally, everyone would want to pray behind the most holiest person in the world. So Huzur also recognized that, so he has also opened that door for them to pray behind him. So again, that's something very interesting to note. Question 4. How do we know we are right when other people of different sects believe they are right? So this is something which is really interesting, and I'll just tell you a small story, which is a personal story to me. During Jalsa, as you know, many people come from many different backgrounds. People have accepted Ahmadiyyat at different times. So I went up to one of the American converts, and as you know, American converts, Americans in general, are very opinionated, and they see things in a different angle to everyone else, in a positive way, of course. And I asked him, when did you become an Ahmadi? So instead of saying, you know, I met this person and I saw this dream, he replied back to me and said, when did you become an Ahmadi? And this took me aback. You know, I said, I was born an Ahmadi. What do you mean? So he said, no, when did you become an Ahmadi? And this made me really think, and this made me ponder about, when did I actually accept Ahmadiyyat? When did I come to an age where I said, wow, Ahmadiyyat is really the true religion for me? And so this basically took me on a journey, and it made me question a lot of things. And it took me a few years actually to actually fully realize. But throughout your days in school, throughout your time with your friends, you will always realize through the upbringing that you had in an Ahmadi household of how you are different to other people and how you stand out, both in physical things, just like when your friends are going partying, you know, you're telling them that, you know, I'm not going to do that. And if your friends are going drinking, if they're taking drugs, you know, you naturally say, look, I'm not going to go do that because my religion stops me from doing that. And you must always look at the benefit of that. And even they recognize, and even they say, you know, you're not missing out on anything. We don't know why we're doing it. It's just a social thing that everyone does, so we do it as well. But it's not benefiting us in any way. If anything, we would like to be like you. And in our school, when we were growing up, we made it clear that we were Ahmadis, and to the point where, you know, teachers would tell us that, please come to this party. It won't be as good without you. But we would stay firm on our faith, and we said, look, Ahmadiyya doesn't allow us to be in such environments. And instead of saying, okay, go away from us, we don't want to be with you, they actually respected that a lot more. So we must always look at the values that Ahmadiyyat gives us, and always pray and thank Allah that we are blessed into such a blessed Jamaat, which makes us shine more than anyone else. And so other sects are going to say the same thing, but then you must go into the more theological matters and really look at what Allah the Almighty has told Islam, the Muslims, of the coming of the signs of the Messiah, and why Ahmadiyyat is here and present today. So then you must understand as well. So Hazrat Masih Maud, even when he became Hazrat Masih Maud, the promised Messiah, he told other people, look, I'm ready to do bayat on your hands. I'm ready to do bayat on anyone's hand if they can show me a living God, if they can show me a God that speaks to me and that answers my prayers. Because as you know, in other sects and other religions, they all say, and they unify on this fact that God doesn't speak to people anymore, and God doesn't answer, show signs and show prophecies anymore. And as a Masih Maud, when he came and said, no, actually, the door of Allah the Almighty is still open, and he still speaks to us today as he spoke to us before. And as you know, Hazrat Masih Maud was foretold to come. And this is something which the whole world has been waiting for. And how can we deny this great sign? How can we say that we would leave this great sign and follow other people while we know that this man has come? It's almost impossible for us to do that. It's against our nature. And it's a natural thing, because just like nature, when someone sees light over darkness, we are naturally inclined to the light. And in the same way, Ahmadiyyat is that light, is that beacon that will guide us through, all these small matters about what is the truth. So we must always hold on to that burning torch, and always follow it, because it's the only thing that will get us through all of these thoughts. Which is why when we are children, we are always brought up in the manner of Ahmadiyyat. We're always told the teachings of Ahmadiyyat in our households, and it's not something which is brainwashing us. In fact, Ahmadiyyat is probably the only religion in the world which is the most open-minded religion. That's because we are the only ones that look at other religions and claim that, your prophet is right, your prophet is right. Whereas other people are looking at us and saying, you are wrong. What you're doing is wrong. Your Quran is wrong. The way you're praying is wrong. And so for anyone who is a neutral, and he would analyze that point, would understand that, which one is the most peaceful. And so this is a short way of understanding why we believe and why we say that Ahmadiyyat is the true Islam, because we are the ones who are promoting peace the most, and we are the ones who are basing our ideology on pure logic. But the key thing is soul searching, and soul searching is what you must do, and you will only do that by going on that journey yourself and trying to find the truth of Ahmadiyyat and why it's true yourself. And Hazrat Masih Maud, he came and did that. He came and said, I didn't just come and just to prove that Jesus ﷺ passed away. Because I too was one of those people before I was told I was Hazrat Masih Maud, but I too thought that Jesus is still in the sky. But Allah the Almighty did it in such a way that He concealed this truth to the world, and it was only now during His time that He was told that this incident actually happened. And so we must look at that, and we must see the truth of Hazrat Masih Maud, because he didn't just come to prove that, and that was a big thing that he proved. The Quran has been here since the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, but no one actually realized this truth. And Hazrat Masih Maud, who came as a Mujaddid, even his eyes weren't open to that fact until he was told of the truth of Jesus ﷺ. So not only did he come for that, but also to teach the true teachings of the Holy Quran, as we know, with the issues of the Holy Prophet ﷺ being the last prophet, etc., etc. So there's obviously a lot of things that you can look into and you should look into to convince yourself fully on the teachings of the Jamaat Ahmadiyya. So soul searching, go on that journey, and inshallah, when you come out of it, you'll be fully satisfied of why this sect of Ahmadiyyat is the true Islam. Okay, going smoothly and quickly. So question 5. So this is, as you know, as I said at the beginning, questions which are short in their letters and in their words, but which are very lengthy. So I've tried my best to make this as short as possible, but it is something which is quite long. So we will learn a few things from this. And what I've done is I've got all the information about Miraj and Isra, and I've put it into this presentation so that you can benefit from it afterwards. And we don't need to read every page because there are quite a few pages which I've included. So we don't need to read every page, but I'm going to try my best to paraphrase each page so that we can really digest what actually happened and really talk about what Miraj and Isra is. So Miraj and Isra, I'll just tell you the crux of it. Miraj and Isra are two spiritual journeys which the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went on during his time when he was alive. And this is the key, that they were spiritual journeys. They were visions. A state when you are not sleeping and not awake. It's a state when you're in between. So this was a spiritual journey. And Miraj, just to put it very briefly before we get into the details of it, Miraj was an incident where Hazrat Jibreel came to the Holy Prophet and took him up. This is all a vision. Took him up into the heavens and went through each level of heaven and until he got to the last level of heaven. And he even conversed with Allah the Almighty, and he saw many prophets in that time. So this was Miraj. And Isra was another spiritual journey where the Holy Prophet ﷺ was taken to Jerusalem, where he did namaz there, and he was leading namaz, and behind him were all the other prophets. So in both of these incidents, both of these stories, both of these journeys, the Holy Prophet ﷺ was shown that he was truly the seal of all the prophets, the best of all prophets. So just taking from the book, this book, The Life and Character of the Seal of the Prophets. So I was just going through this before Rafi Saab's lesson, and I was trying to get the details out, so I was a bit rushed. But in this, was it Mirza Bashir Ahmed, M.A., the brother of Khalifa Sani Razit, who has written a very detailed explanation of what Miraj and Isra were. So Miraj literally means an ascension. An ascension means going up, and Isra means a journey. So both, one is going up and one is going literally the other direction, sideways. So just in the physical explanation of the words, you can understand that both are separate. But people, Muslims especially, have merged the two together, and this is what we'll try to understand, and try to understand how they are both different incidents, but Muslims have said they are both the same. But alhamdulillah, because Hazrat Masih has come, and through the Khulafa we understand that both are different incidents, both are mentioned in the Quran in different places and on just separate occasions. And even famous historians, Sirat Ibn Hisham and Ibn Sa'd, both testify to the fact that they were both separate incidents. So the journey of Miraj, so something for the kids and something for everyone, just to go on this journey together. And it's something which is very interesting and something to note. When the Holy Prophet ﷺ one day was sitting at the Kaaba, and I've paraphrased it so it's a bit easier to read. He was sitting, as I said, he was in a state of not sleeping, but not awake. At this time, Hazrat Jibreel, the archangel, the best of all angels, came to him and cleansed his heart with Zamzam water. And he told him that, we're going up to heaven. And as you know, this is a vision, so you must remember this. This is very important. And he went to all the different levels of heaven. So when he went to the first door of heaven, Hazrat Jibreel knocked on the door, and the gatekeeper said, "Who is it?" So Hazrat Jibreel replies that it is me, Gabriel, and I am with Muhammad. So then the gatekeeper opened the door and welcomed them and said salam to them. And Hazrat Jibreel and Holy Prophet said salam back to them. He was welcomed by an old man saying, "Welcome, O righteous Prophet." So this man, which the Holy Prophet ﷺ saw, was Hazrat Adam. And as you know, Hazrat Adam was the first prophet, and he came with the first Sharia, the first law that God is one. So this is why he's put onto the first heaven. Then Hazrat Jibreel took him to the other doors. So he went to the second door where Hazrat Isa, Jesus salam, and John, so John the Baptist, both of whom came as reformers of their faith. So Jesus salam was the second coming of Hazrat Musa, and John salam, or John the Baptist, was the second coming of Elijah. So they were both put on the same level there. And so these two were on the second level, and the same thing happened. They said salam to each other. And then Hazrat Jibreel took them to the third, the fourth, and the fifth levels of heaven, where Joseph, Enoch, and Aaron were all there. Hazrat Yusuf, Enoch, and Hazrat Harun. Hazrat Yusuf, as you know, was considered the most beautiful prophet. So again, this is something to show that, you know, the Holy Prophet ﷺ is excelling all of these prophets. The more he sees, the more he's excelling over them, which shows that the Holy Prophet ﷺ was better physically, meaning that he was more beautiful, and spiritually he was ahead of all of these prophets. So then when he gets to the sixth heaven, this is where it gets really interesting. The sixth heaven, he meets Hazrat Musa ﷺ. And when he meets him, you know, he walks past him. And as soon as he walks past him, Hazrat Musa ﷺ begins to weep, and he begins to cry. And Hazrat Jibreel turns to him and said, "Why are you crying, Moses?" And Hazrat Musa said that, you know, this man who has come from behind me is now going ahead of me, and I know that his community will be better than mine. And so this is a very interesting incident, which shows that Hazrat Muhammad was even greater than Hazrat Musa, who, you know, is the great prophet for all the Bani Israel. After that, the Holy Prophet ﷺ went to the seventh heaven. And in the seventh heaven, he saw Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ leaning on Beit al-Ma'mur. And Beit al-Ma'mur was literally like the Kaaba that we have now, but in heaven. It's the center point of heaven for worship. So he walked past even Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ. And Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ, as you know, he is known as the father of all the prophets. Ib literally means father, and Rahim literally means nations, the father of the nations. So even the Holy Prophet ﷺ was even greater than Hazrat Ibrahim in his status. After that, he moved forward to an area where no man had ever gone before. And in this area, Hazrat Jibreel said, Hazrat Jibreel said to the Holy Prophet ﷺ that I cannot come with you any further because I'm not allowed in this area. So the Holy Prophet advanced ahead of Hazrat Jibreel ﷺ to a place where there was a low tree. And so this low tree is also known in the Holy Quran as Sidratul Muntaha, the highest level in heaven. And this is the status which the Holy Prophet ﷺ was given. In talking more about Miraj, the Holy Prophet ﷺ in this Miraj, in this vision, saw the real form of Hazrat Jibreel, and he said Hazrat Jibreel had 600 wings, which showed that he was truly a magnificent creation amongst all the angels. He was seen as the leader of all the angels, and so both in this world and the hereafter, the Holy Prophet was shown that he was greater than all of them. And the amazing thing is, just like, you know, when we have nowadays they're doing virtual tours of mosques, when the Holy Prophet ﷺ was taken to heaven, he was given a whole tour of the whole of the heaven. Upon this, he met with Allah the Almighty, and Allah commanded him to tell his community, tell the Muslims, to pray 50 times a day. So this is a time when prayer was being established. So just before that, God Almighty said that tell your community that they must pray 50 times a day. He said, okay. So when he went back, Hazrat Musa والسلام, said to the Holy Prophet, what did he say to you? And he said that I have to tell my people that they must pray 50 times a day. So then Hazrat Musa والسلام, said, do you really think your people will pray 50 times a day? I know these people more than anyone. They will not pray that many times. Go back to him and try to lower it a bit. So this happened a few times. So they'd lower it until they got to the number 5. And so after it came to 5, Hazrat Musa والسلام, said, no, go back again and lower it. And upon this, the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that, I'm too embarrassed. I can't go again. Just like, when we're asking our parents for something, we're asking them again and again until we get to a point where, it's got to a limit that, we can't ask for more. So at the number 5, another reason why we pray 5 daily prayers. The Holy Prophet said, enough is enough. I can't ask for more. So when they said this, it was also said that for every 5 prayers, it will be counted as 10 prayers. So in the end, we actually got to the level of praying 50 times because each prayer was like it was being prayed 10 times. So we got what was originally given to us in the end. So the main point after this is when he came back down, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, in Hadith, it says that his eyes opened, which clearly shows that this was a vision. And so this is the main point, and this list is just a list of all the prophets which we saw, and this testifies to the fact that the Holy Prophet ﷺ was truly Khatamun Nabiyyin, that he was the best of all the prophets in physical terms and in spiritual terms and in his status. So this was an amazing journey which the Holy Prophet was taken on, but the key thing is that it was spiritual. So this was Miraj. Now we'll talk about Isra quickly because we still have a lot of questions to go through. Excuse me. Miraj and Isra. Isra now, this is also mentioned in the Holy Quran in Bani Israel, and we'll go to the verses right after this, just to answer all the questions against Miraj and Isra being the same thing. Jazakallah again for the questioner for sending this. It's a very, very beautiful question, and I hope that we can do justice to it while we're talking about it. So in Isra, another vision, there was an animal which was sent to the Holy Prophet, which is known as Burak. So Burak was larger than a donkey, smaller than a mule, and it was said that this was such a beautiful animal, something which would travel so fast and so quickly. And when the Holy Prophet mounted this Burak, it took him all the way to Jerusalem, from Mecca to Jerusalem. Remember this. Upon this, he entered the mosque, and where he was there, the names which were mentioned specifically were Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Musa and Hazrat Isa. So when he met all of them, they did namaz together. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ led the namaz. And behind him were these prophets along with all the other prophets. So again, this shows another sign of how the Holy Prophet ﷺ was ahead of all of them, physically and also spiritually. Just to mention this point, in Isra it's also mentioned that Hazrat Jibreel ﷺ presented 2 cups. In other narrations, it's 3 cups. One was alcohol, one was milk, and in the third narration, it's water. So he was told to choose 1 cup, and the Holy Prophet ﷺ chose milk. And as Jibreel said that you chose right. If you chose alcohol, then your community would have been destroyed and they would have gone astray. If you chose water, your community would have been flooded. And if you look at it in the moral sense, that those who take alcohol, they will be deviated from the path. Who take water, they will be flooded in their sins. So milk is seen as something pure and something which is full of blessings. So these were the two incidents of Miraj and Isra. So this is something which we should just mention. In this is just a document which was in Urdu, and I will just quickly explain which each of these pages are. And this is saying that how the Miraj and Isra were spiritual journeys, and how in the Quran we can prove this. So in the Quran, the verse for Miraj is the first one. Is أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فكان قاب قوسين أو أدنى فأوحى إلى عبده ما أوحى وكذب الفؤاد ما رأى. So ما كذب الفؤاد ما رأى. So again, this is just saying that how close the Holy Prophet ﷺ was to Allah the Almighty. Qaba Qawsaini is literally like a bow and arrow. So you have the bow and you have the arrow, and this is how close how close of a relationship Allah the Almighty has to the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And it says the heart did not lie. And so as we know, the Holy Prophet's eyes were closed, but his heart was open. And again, in the second verse, which is about Isra, it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى. And then, so this is explaining how the Holy Prophet was taken from Baitul Haram, Makkah, to Masjid Aqsa. So this is again very clear in what happened and how it's all purposely in two different places in the Holy Quran. So again, in this verse, I had to do this really quickly just before coming on. This is saying that it was a spiritual journey, how the eyes of the Holy Prophet were closed and his heart was open, and it was shown all of these visions. In a hadith, it is said that ثُمَّ اسْتَيْقَظَ, that at the end of all of this journey, the Holy Prophet ﷺ woke up. And so if it was a physical ascension, what would be the need to wake up? So this is something really important to note and to understand and to think about it logically, how this journey happened. Another question which can be asked is, why would the Holy Prophet ﷺ need to go all the way to heaven to see God? Is God not everywhere? As you know, in the Holy Quran says, wherever you look, wherever you turn, Allah the Almighty will be there. So what would be the purpose of going all the way to heaven physically to see God when He is everywhere in the world? So again, that's another question which we can pose to those people who say that it was physical to go see God. Again, with the Isra, as you know, most journeys which we do physically are during the day. But why would, if it was physical, why would the Holy Prophet ﷺ journey at night? Is the distance between Mecca and Jerusalem not a lot? Wouldn't it take him days, if not weeks, to travel by foot to go to Jerusalem? So this is again, the Quran specifically says laylan. So it was done in one night. He went all the way to Jerusalem, came all the way back. So even someone with a little understanding would understand that, you know, this was a dream or a vision. So this is again something which we should just analyze and just to ponder over. So again, this is again testifying to what I just said about the journey and how big the distance was between Jerusalem and Mecca. So another point in Hadith, just to wrap up this question, is that the Jews, when he came back from Isra, you know, they thought they were clever. They thought that they could ask the Holy Prophet ﷺ, because they knew themselves and everyone knew that he had not gone to Jerusalem, and they knew that he didn't go. So they asked him, okay, what did it look like? What did Beit al-Aqsa look like? What did the mosque in Jerusalem look like? And they thought they were clever by asking him. And even the Holy Prophet ﷺ became quite worried, and he knew that he didn't know, because it was a vision, and he was taken straight into the mosque. And so in that moment, Allah the Almighty showed him exactly what the mosque looked like, and he described word for word and point for point exactly what Jerusalem looked like and the mosque of Jerusalem looked like. And when he finished saying this, the Jews became completely quiet, and they became completely embarrassed because they knew what he was saying was exactly right. And so if you put all of this together, you know, it was one night, it was done in a vision, and he prayed in front of all the prophets and everything, etc. You can understand how this wasn't a physical ascension or physical journey, it was spiritual. So again, I've put this link and the book as well at the bottom. If anyone wants to read further into it, you can. So Khalif Rabi is explaining exactly everything that we just talked about, and how it cannot be physical, and it doesn't make sense that it was physical. So alhamdulillah, as I said before, answering the question before this of how you know Ahmadiyyat is the truth, you can ask Muslims about this, and they would say that you know, it was done through lightning speed. The Holy Prophet was taken, his body was taken. They tried to prove through science that he was taken from the earth and he was taken to heaven in the split of a second. And they use all these numbers, and it really doesn't make sense. And it's like they're making things up as they're going along. So this base everything on logic and understanding, and just work with the nature of Allah the Almighty. Then you can really understand these truths. And even as Aisha Radhiyallahu anha said that whoever says that he went up in his body is a liar. So again, the person who we're supposed to learn half of our religion from, if she's saying this, you know, we must also listen to that and understand that. Okay, so that's the big question done. This also is a bit, this can be a bit complicated. So the short answer is no, it's not haram. The more deeper question, detailed question, answer to this is that Huzur Anwar has said, someone wrote a letter to Huzur to him asking if spirit vinegar, you know, all these vinegars that we use, are they haram? Are they unlawful? So the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he gave this answer. Said Holy Prophet ﷺ said that vinegar is actually best used for salan. So this just as a short answer would explain everything. To get more into the details of it, the presence of alcohol is converted into acetic acid. So there is no alcohol left. Vinegars are made from fruit like apples and grapes, and the only difference is that residual compounds is in those fruits impart a distinctive flavor. So it's only the flavor which is left. And so, as you know, wine and etc. are made from fruits. But that doesn't mean that we can't consume grapes. It doesn't mean that we can't consume apples. The most important thing is what the Holy Prophet ﷺ said. And he said that if any large amount of anything causes intoxication, a small amount of it is prohibited. So this causes the question, does that mean that we can't have grapes? Does that mean that we can't eat apples? Of course not. So again, it's the same application to consuming vinegar. As you know, if the Holy Prophet ﷺ consumed it, there must be an underlying message to this hadith. This hadith teaches us that if a large amount of a drink cannot cause intoxication, then there is no reason for it to be prohibited, even if it does have some alcohol in it. So alcohol in general isn't haram, because as you know, we consume it in many different ways. We have it in our medicine, we have it in other forms as well. So the main idea here is that what doesn't make you fall into a state of being drunk or being intoxicated on a large scale, then it's okay to take it on a small scale. But we'll answer the questions around that as well. For example, when you have alcohol in cakes and in chocolate and stuff, is it okay to have that? So we're going to go through that as well. But before that, I'll just give you some examples of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said, and he basically gave, he used to tell the holy people about this element called nabid. And nabid could be used for alcohol, because before they would use this food, and before Islam came, and they would convert it into alcohol, just like grape is used, etc. So nabid as well was food. It wasn't a medicine. And the way it was prepared, it was with dates, some bark trees, some mixed water, and it was permitted to be buried in the ground overnight. And basically the reason they drank this was because it would satiate their thirst, and it would quench their thirst. And the more you drank it, they wouldn't have any effect on your behavior, or it wouldn't intoxicate you in any single way. So that is really the key to understanding. If it doesn't affect you in a large scale, intoxicate you in a large scale, then it's okay to have it in a small scale. So the same application is for vinegar, is for wine vinegar. But if it does affect you and it does intoxicate you, then that is the limit which the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that you cannot have it. For example, Khalifa Rabi Rahimullah said, a person cannot become intoxicated from drinking cough syrup, because the quantity of medicine in it will kill the person before the quantity of alcohol in it can intoxicate him. The same applies to nabidh or any similar food or drink. So again, this gives us another understanding that the quantity of the medicine should be larger than the quantity of the alcohol, which shouldn't overtake your intoxication level. So that's the important thing. And something which we should understand. But then some people may ask, why can't we have cake with alcohol in it? Why can't we have chocolate with alcohol in it? So Huzur Anwar cleared this conception, cleared this matter up, and he said that I don't eat such cakes knowing it, because if I take one step in this direction, I know other people will start taking many steps in that direction and start misusing this license. So safe principle is something else. Correct, true application of a principle of jurisprudence is something else. As far as my advice, I told her, this woman, you and your children are concerned, don't take this license, because if you permit your children to start eating such cakes, you'll have a society of wine drinkers and beer drinkers. So they will have this taboo destroyed. This inborn inhibition will be damaged. Then they will gradually be drawn into transgressing into other positively forbidden areas. So this is the safe principle. So again, the underlying message to this is that, to the question, yeah, you can use wine vinegar and other vinegars because the Holy Prophet ﷺ used it, and because it doesn't intoxicate you in any way. But also always remember that anything which intoxicates you on a large level, you shouldn't take on a small level. And also anything which does have alcohol in it, in terms of food, in terms of cakes and etc., and which we have just discussed, for people of low faith, if you give them permission to start taking them, they'll start using this rule for other things, and it will slowly lead to bigger vices and bigger sins, and they will start eventually falling into that trap. So parents must be very wise in this manner. But when it comes to cooking and things, then it's totally fine. So to directly answer the question, yes, you can use the vinegar in your food. Okay, another quick question: does laughing in namaz break wuzu? To answer this, laughing in namaz breaks your namaz, not your wuzu. So that's something important to understand. Your attention is taken away from Allah and your prayers. So you should, in that moment when you do laugh, and we've all gone through it, it happens. If your kid's running around, is jumping on you, sometimes your attention is taken away and you start laughing. Basically, in that moment, if you really have that spiritual strength, you just break your namaz, you try to refocus and try to enter namaz again. Don't try to just do namaz just to get to the end of it and try to laugh your way right to the end of it, because that's not the way, that's not the etiquettes of what namaz is. So if it does ever happen, and it does happen, you do come across it, this is why the rule is there. You just have to break your namaz, try to put yourself back into the mental state of praying, and then start doing namaz again. So that's the instruction, and that's the rules of trying to stay focused in namaz. Question 8. When and how should I pay fidya? So coming to the end of Ramadan, this question is going to be coming up more. The chanda collectors are going to be coming to you and asking you, have you paid your fidya, etc., etc. So one of the most important things about fidya, fidya was set up by the Holy Prophet ﷺ to to help the poor. So one of the key things about fidya is that people ask, do we have to give it to Jamaat or can we give it ourselves? So one of the great practices which the Holy Prophet ﷺ taught us and which Hazur has explained is that when you can't fast on those days, one of the greatest things you can do is give fidya on that day instead of giving it right at the end. If you have the strength, if you have the capability of doing that, then try giving it on that day, because the day which you aren't fasting, you should try to provide the sadaqah or the fidya to someone who doesn't have food and who does need food. So in that sense, on that day, you'll feel that satisfaction that, I couldn't fast today because I was ill, because I wasn't physically able to, or because I was traveling, but I was able to give sadaqah in a way to Allah the Almighty, so that I know that someone out there will be able to benefit from it. And so this can be in two different ways. You can pay online, you can pay as a spiritual sadaqah into a box, even though that money is not going to go anywhere, but in your heart you've given it. And also if someone's asking for money, you can present them that money in the same accordance to fidya. So Huzur in Fiqh al-Masail, the show on MTA, they explained that the Jamaat is there also as an additional way to give fidya, but it's not the only way which you can give fidya. So again, this is something which might be new and might be interesting to you. So try to get that satisfaction. That's the main thing, and trying to get that the way of the Holy Prophet ﷺ has taught us to give back to the poor on the days that we can't fast. Question 9. I've come to know recently, I think this is the last question as well, come to know recently that mothers who feed their children give fidya, but will I have to observe fast once finishing the menstruation? So this is as I said, this is the last question. So the difference between menstruation and breastfeeding or feeding children are different, because when you're on menstruation, you come under the category of being ill. It doesn't mean that you can't physically carry out a fast. So it means that you can do it, you can fast, but because you are on menstruation, you can't in that time. So you should fulfill those days, as the Quran says, فَإِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامِ الْأُخَرِ. So fulfill those days in other times. The difference between breastfeeding is that someone who is breastfeeding a child, she needs those nutrients to feed her children, and that's why she can't fast. And as you know, the Quran says to the women who are breastfeeding, is that they should do it no more than 2 years if they can. And so if someone's had a child, and after 2 years another child has come, and after 2 years another child has come, and so on and so forth, if Allah blesses us in that way, then they can go for many, many years without fasting. With menstruation is different. It just comes on a regular basis for regular people on once a month, and so meaning the whole other time they can fast. But for someone who's breastfeeding, they can't. And take this scenario, for example, if someone has had 5 children or 6 children in the space of every 2 years, so by the end of 10 years or 12 years, they weren't fasting the whole time. But the moment they stop having children, does that mean that for the past 12 years, for the past 12 Ramazans, they have to fulfill all of those fasts? So 12 times 30? Surely that goes against what Islam teaches about tusiru wala tu'asiru, that cause ease in your religion, not hardship. And so that would, I think that would only cause a lot of hardship on that individual, and I don't think Allah has created us in that way that we go through that strain in our lives. So this is the main understanding, that menstruation and people feeding children are 2 separate categories. So yes, that's the end of the question and answers today. We went a bit over, but alhamdulillah, I think it was very beneficial. Jazakumullah for everyone who sent in their questions. I mean, these are your questions, and these are the questions which we are all benefiting from. And sometimes when you don't have questions, you hear another question and you think, okay, that actually benefited me a lot. So we're going to try and find a way to try and continue this after Ramadan. But for now, just after Ramadan, just enjoy your Eid, and we'll try to discuss when we can reconvene, not just with the question and answers, but with other lessons as well. And because we are in a time where we can't go to the mosque, so we should try to continue our lessons in different ways. So, Jazakumullah Jaza for everyone for listening today, for listening to the Quran lesson and listening to the question and answer. Inshallah, tomorrow again we'll have another daras on a different topic. So inshallah we'll reconvene on that day. Jazakumullah jaza. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim innaka Hamidun Majid.